What is up, family? It's your boy D coming right back at you with another one. In my last video, or after my last video, I got a few comments about voice coils. I got a few comments about voice coils, and more specifically, someone asked me about a voice coil and what was the difference between a dual 4 ohm and uh, a single voice coils at 4 ohms. And I'm going to try to kind of like answer that for you and kind of give you like a very simplistic view of what a voice coil is. And for all my more experienced listeners out there, I just want you to keep in mind that with this channel, I'm not gearing the videos more so toward the experienced guys. Okay, this is pretty much what I wish people would have told me when I first got off into car audio. I don't do this professionally, but I do a lot of this as a hobby and for friends and family. I do plan on doing some professional aspect of car audio that is later on. I do plan on doing some building a store for that, but that is not what I'm doing this video for. What I'm doing this videos for is to kind of like give like I said, a simplistic view or example of what a voice coil is and how they are constructed. So basically what you have here with the voice coil, not to get too techie with it, not to use too many professional terms. I don't want to put you guys to sleep with that, but just know that a voice coil pretty much in all cases start out looking almost like an empty tissue roll. We can say that. Like this piece right here is pretty much what it is. You have this material here can be either paper or it can be made of a metal. In this case, ours is made of a metal. This would be copper. Sometimes it's aluminum, sometimes it is paper, depends on the application. Also keep in mind that the reason why it would be different metals is because copper is better handling at heat, and it has a better conductivity when it comes down to electricity, and aluminum is pretty much a lighter material. Aluminum is. It doesn't conduct heat as well as copper does, but it is a lighter material, and you usually find aluminum inside of applications that is pretty much designed to be beat to sleep. Why? Because they are light, they're going to get a lot of cone movement, and the more power you have, the more likely you're going to get some air displacement. The cone isn't as heavy. Some of you may be wondering, well, you know, with it being aluminum and copper and it's being such a small part of the driver or the woofer, why would weight be an issue? Well, when you're powering your systems and you're trying to get every ounce and every minute level of a dB or decibel on that graph, on that chart, during that competition, that little bit of weight that this voice cone has does come into effect. It is very, very important because copper is heavier than aluminum, and that's just something you have to take into account. Okay, moving on. So another thing that I wanted to point out to you guys, and like I said, let's not overcomplicate this, right? What I want you to know about the voice coil is that it is simply a wounding of a wired material around, like I said, an empty, maybe I shouldn't say that, an empty tissue paper cone, but that's what it looks like. You call it the former, right? Or the bobbin. But I'm not going to get into all of that right now. Just know that this tube right here, which can be paper or metal, has wire wrapped around it. And in essence, it looks more like this coil right here. Just imagine this thick piece of coil being that thin wire that you just seen up there. And this is pretty much, in essence, what it would look like wrapped around that paper or metal cylinder. Okay? Now, in all essence, we're used to seeing voice coils like this. Okay, we see the basket attached to it, the spider attached to it. In this case, this one doesn't even have a spider. I didn't even design it with a spider because I got one already. And this here is the cone that you will see doing all the flex. I didn't put the dust cap here and a rubber surround to keep this thing from flying up out of its housing. So this is pretty much what you will see. And like I said, you got the cylinder shape here with the wire wound around it. Now keep in mind, if you notice this coil right here, it has a beginning end and it has an ending end. So it only has two ends. So in essence, this is only one piece of wire. Please keep this in mind, people, moving forward, because this is going to make the example a whole lot easier. This, if stretched out onto this table, would only be one wire. Okay, that is very, very important. I'm going to explain this to you in a minute. Okay, if you see here, this one piece of wire has a beginning end and it has an ending end. That's why you have two leads right here. Just because you see two leads, it doesn't mean that it's two different pieces of wire. This is the same wire. So this wire has been wound around this cone. Let's just say, for instance, if this was a single Vorce coil, this would mean that this piece of wire has been wound around this Vorce coil, around this cylinder, 4 different times. If you notice here, you have 1 layer, then they wounded it again, 2 layer, and then they wounded it again, 3 and 4 layers. So the manufacturer would advertise or display this Vorce coil as being a single 4-layer Vorce coil, and it would give it a rating, whether it be a 1 ohm, a 2 ohm, or a 4 ohm Vorce coil. And in some cases you have 8 ohms. But for sake of this demonstration, we're simply going to keep it at 2 and 4 ohms. So let's just say, for instance, if this was a single 4-layer Vorce coil rated at 4 ohms, that means that if you have an amplifier that was rated at 2 ohms or 4 ohms, that this application right here would be suited for that amplifier. Why? Because that amplifier can handle a 4 ohm load, which is what this Vorce coil can produce, or what it is rated at. So this Vorce coil would match up to, say, this amplifier, if this amplifier was rated at 2 or 4 ohms. Now let's take this a step further. What if this 4-layered Vorce coil, we see it's 4-layer, what if it was, what if this was a dual Vorce coil? You see this? What if it had another set of leads over here? What would that mean? In essence, what this would mean is that instead of this being 1 wire wrapped 4 times upon itself, this is actually 2 wires. You understand what I'm saying? And that means that this wire was wrapped twice upon itself, and then they wrapped it again with another wire twice upon itself. So this 4-layer Vorce coil would actually be two windings for this wire and 2 windings for this wire. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's just say, for instance, if this Vorce coil here, this dual Vorce coil, was rated at 4 ohms. Okay, let's just say, for instance, if it was rated, no, I'll take that back. Let's play with this. Let's have some fun with this. What if this Vorce coil was now rated at 2 ohms? Okay, let's say, for instance, if this Vorce coil was rated at 2 ohms. I want you guys to keep something in mind. Whenever a dual Vorce coil subwoofer is rated at a certain ohm, if it have a certain ohms rating, that means that both Vorce coils have that rating, not them combined. That means that this over here is a 2 ohm Vorce coil. It has 2 ohms of resistance, and this one over here has also 2 ohms of resistance. Now, where a lot of beginner people make the mistakes is that they I've actually seen some people wire these only on one side. They would wire only one side of a dual voice coil. And I'm going to tell you why that is not a good idea. It is not a good idea because now you only can benefit from half of what this application has to offer. You have to wire, in order for it to play at its optimal rating, you have to wire both sides. Okay? You have to wire both sides. So in essence, what would that do in terms of the amplifier that we have? Because we already know, as we stated earlier, this amplifier is rated at 2 ohm stable and 4 ohm stable. That means that you can have 4 ohms of resistance and this will do just fine. And you can have 2 ohms of resistance and it'll be just fine. Now, let's play with the math right quick. This is something that a lot of people run away from, is the math. And like I said, I was trying to keep this simple as possible, but you can't run away from the math if you want to do this properly. You cannot run away from the math. You need to know some simple math equations, right? So in essence, since we have a 2 ohm load over here and a 2 ohm load over there, it comes down to answering the question, what is the difference between parallel wiring and what is the difference between series wiring? All right, so to answer that question in the most simplest term, we're going to go back to the basics. And what we're going to focus on is the fact that this voice coil, just like this voice coil, is only one wire. So in essence, a dual voice coil is in essence a voice coil that has 2 individual wires. Keep that in mind. Let's go back over here in case, just to do a recap. This would represent a single voice coil subwoofer because it only has one wire. And it has an ending here and it has an ending here. And once they finish wounding that up, what they do is they run those 2 wires up to the cone area here. And that's why you see, not in the cone area, they were running out of the spider actually. They would run it from here and you will see it out of the spider and it would be housed somewhere here on the basket where you can push it on some terminals. Solder it to some terminals. So this is one wire and that is one wire. So this has been a dual voice coil. It has 2 wires that's been wound around this cylinder right here. Okay, so series wiring would be this. You would, in essence, if, let's just say for instance, I'm going to give you a number. If this stretched out, if this coil right here stretched out on this table was 1 foot long, right? You unwind it and just stretch it out. And if this was 1 foot long, series wiring would do this. Series wiring would do this. I gotta make another example for you guys right quick, right? Let's make another example here. Series wiring would do this because we do have 2 voice coils up here. It would connect this end of this 1 foot coil. It would connect this end to this end of this 1 foot coil and giving you a 2 foot coil. So in essence, what it would do is create one long wire. It would connect the ends of these 2 wires and make one long wire. So in essence, what it would be doing is lengthening the wounding of that wire. So now you no longer have 2 wires. In essence, when you wire a dual voice coil in series, you're really turning 2 ends or 2 leads or 2 terminals into one. So what effect does that have on the ohm rating? What you have just done by lengthening the wire, right? Now I'm finna get a little techie with you guys. By lengthening the wire, what you did is you increased the resistance. You just increased the resistance. Why? Because instead of the energy having to flow through one wire, which is hard enough, I gotta throw that out there, which is hard enough to flow through one wire, I already got 2 ohms of resistance. Resistance meaning that I am resisting the flow of your electric current. I am resisting the flow of your electric current. By how much? By 2 ohms. Look at 2 ohms being, I don't know, let's just say, not to get too techie, let's just say, for instance, if 2 ohms represented 2 people pushing against a door, right? So instead of me having to push against 2 people, now you got me pushing against two more people. So in essence, by making this one long coil, right? By making this one long coil, what you have done is you have increased the amount of people that I have to push against, right? So now this, in essence, let me see if I can position this right quick for you guys. Okay. In essence, get over there, man. Oh, it's acting crazy. So I think you guys see where I'm trying to go with this. In essence, it has created one very long voice coil. So now you've doubled the resistance. Instead of me having to push against only 2 people, now I have to push against 4 people. It's pretty much what's going on here. So you made one long wire. And the same thing happens over here with this voice coil. Okay? So what you're doing is you're doubling the amount of resistance against me. So instead of it being 2 ohms, now it's a 4 ohm load. And guess what? Remember we talked about this amplifier being stable at 2 ohms and 4 ohms. So now this application right here, this amplifier, is still good for that application. So you can run this dual 2 ohm voice coil in series, and this amplifier right here would be just fine. It won't burn up. It's not pushing against too much. It ain't got too much to handle because it's only 4 ohms of resistance, and I can do that. Now, if it was 8 ohms, you'd probably burn the amp up. It has to push against too much. You understand what I'm saying? And the same thing goes if it was not enough ohms, and we're finna get to that next. All right, so what I did was, an example is we showed how series wiring makes this pretty much one longer wire, okay? One longer wire. Now, what does parallel does? I'm going to tell you what parallel does. Let's get rid of this first. This no longer applies. So, what parallel does is this. Instead of this one long wire, this 1 foot wire, the length of this wire is not going to change. Okay? Let's talk about resistance a little bit. Okay? We talked about resistance just a little bit. We had to get another understanding of what resistance is, right? Okay, so boom. This is resistance. Energy has to flow through these coils in order to make the speaker activate. Now, anytime you're running energy through anything, everything has a certain level of resistance to it. It has a certain ohms rating to it. Any wire, any metal material does. We use copper because copper has a more conductive property to it. Energy flows through it very, very well, better than it does copper, which is why in a lot of applications, voice coils, when they are aluminum, they are what they call copper cladded, meaning that you have an aluminum wire that's been dipped in copper. It's not all the way copper, but it is light enough, and it does have copper to help to control the conductivity of it. So it'll still receive power and it got lightweight. Okay? So you can bang the crap of it and you still get the results that you want. Okay, so when you're talking about resistance, the longer this wire is, the more resistance you're going to have. That's how speaker manufacturers control the ohm ratings of voice coils, by the type of material that they use, the length of the voice coil wire, and the thickness of the voice coil wiring. So if this is a 1 foot wire and it's rated at 2 ohms, right? How would you bring the resistance down? You can either make this a shorter wire. You can make it instead of it being 1 foot long or 12 inches long. I'm sorry. Instead of it being 1 foot long, make it half a foot. And that's a shorter path in which the energy have to flow, which means that it doesn't have to go through as much wire, and that's going to cut it in half. So instead of this being, essentially, instead of it being a 2 ohm load, if I cut this in half, this would be a 1 ohm load. Another way that I can cut this in half is by doubling the amount of material that is here. Okay? Keep that in mind, by doubling the amount of material that is here. So how would I do that? Make the wire thicker. That's it. Make it thicker. The thicker the wire, the bigger a channel that the energy has to flow through, and the less resistance that it has. It's that simple. So how does parallel wiring of a voice coil work? Just like that. What they do here in parallel wiring, what you're going to do is you're going to take, let's say for instance, if this is positive and this is negative. This is positive and this is negative. You're going to take this positive and connect it to this positive. You're going to take this negative and connect it to this negative. Why are you doing that? For one, you're not increasing the length of it at all. Keep in mind, they're the same length. In the same length, you're not increasing the length, you're combining the wires into one. Now the wire is thicker. In essence, it's a thicker wire. So the resistance has been cut in half. So instead of this being a 2 ohm load over here and a 2 ohm load over here, this has now been cut down to a 1 ohm load overall. You understand? You combine both of these. Now you only have one wounding in essence. It's only one wire. That's a 1 ohm load now. So what does this do in terms of the amplifier? Okay? In terms of this amplifier, what has just happened is that when you connect that 1 ohm load to an amplifier that is only 2 ohms stable, that's the lowest it can go. It's 2 ohms. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Typically, in the front of these applications, typically, you would have this. This is something, you would see something like this, right? You would see this. And I'm going to show you. These will be your fuses. Sometimes you only have 1 fuse. Sometimes you have 2 fuses. I've actually seen up to 3 fuses, sometimes 4. Depending on the application, you'll have different fuses, right? So these will be your fuses right here. Let's make it proper. I'm going to fuses. Those fuses be like what? Yellow. Some of them be green. So we're just gonna hook them up. These are gonna be your green fuses, right? So you have fuses right here. So what these fuses does is protect the amp against too much of a current flow. Okay, remember, this amp is rated at, let's get techie with it, right? It's rated at, I don't know, 1,000 watts at 4 ohm, at a 4 ohm load. I'm sorry, 500 watts at a 4 ohm load, 1,000 watts at 2 ohm load, and that's about the best it can do. Now, so you saying, hey, what the manufacturer is telling you is that at 2 ohms, we can do 1,000 watts all day long as your gains are set properly, your fuses, everything is in play, the resistance of the woofer is correct and matched what the amplifier says. We can do 1,000 watt at a 2 ohm load all single day. Why? Because it's flowing at just enough rate to where we can output that all day. All day we can, if the environment is right, if you got the amplifier in a place where it can cool, we can do that all day. All right, boom. So what happens when you put a 1 ohm load on here? A 1 ohm load is going to allow the energy, the power to flow too quickly from this amplifier. And one of 2 things is going to happen. Either internally you're going to burn something out, or hopefully these fuses do their job and blow and trip the circuit before all that happens. It's either going to have an internal trip and it's going to go in protect mode, or the fuses are going to blow. That's what's going to happen if you try to wire this down. If you wire this down to 1 ohms, meaning that if you put this 2 ohm voice coil and wire it in parallel and bring it down to 1 ohm, this thing ain't going to play too long before it trips. Okay? So that's pretty much, I hope I answered the questions that you guys asked about the voice coils. If not, I just, please leave a comment in the section below and I'll try to clear things up for you later on. But for right now, I'm going to leave it at that. Don't forget, if you got something out of this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the icon, click the bell icon so you can get regular updates as soon as I upload. And don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you appreciated what I had to bring. But for right now, I'm gonna let you guys get back to it. Until next time, it's your boy D, and I'm out.